Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are talking about Weretigers. And this is a paid Kickstarter preview, so this is going to be more of an overview than a review, but we're going to talk about the nuts and bolts, the how to play, all that kind of thing.
Weretigers is a 1 to 4 player game designed by Curci with illustration by Kevin Hlaing, and it is a cooperative tower defense game where you are villagers trying to defend your village from Weretigers. Let's look at how it plays.
You start the game with a set of 4 villager cards, a player board and dice in your color, and a game board just waiting to be filled with Weretigers hungry to attack your village. On your turn, you roll 2 dice and then place those dice on any free action space. These actions trigger things like placing a trap to catch Weretigers, building a wall to temporarily stop Weretigers, flipping over tokens on the board to reveal Weretigers or hopefully harmless wind, recruiting a villager to give you more actions, fighting Weretigers near your village, and adding dice to your XP track, which when full will release a new die and give you an extra action per turn. After you have placed your dice, you have to flip the top card of the deck and do what it says, which is often adding tokens to one of the 3 tracks on the board or moving those tokens forward. If a revealed Weretiger makes its way to your village, it will discard villager cards equal to its damage, and if your deck ever runs out, you lose. If an unflipped token ever makes it to your village, it fills one of your 3 villager market slots forever, and if all 3 slots are ever filled, you lose. However, if you can stop both of these things from happening and make it all the way to the bottom of the deck, the town is saved and you win, at least for now.
So in the how to play, you saw that it was a cooperative game and you do very much have to work together and talk with each other. But on your turn, you have to decide what you're going to do with your dice. And it can be really tempting to deal with any immediate threats. You'll want to be able to reveal those tokens, see what's on the other side, and fight any of the Weretigers that are nearby or in the village. But it's often also good to set yourself up for the future by setting traps or building walls, or also locking dice to be able to eventually unlock another dice.
Yeah, that XP track is especially interesting because that really is just giving up actions right now in order to get more actions in the future. But it is important because when you can roll 3 dice or 4 dice, that's a lot more actions that you're taking every time. And this game does kind of ramp up. So in those early rounds, you do generally have a little bit more time to be able to not really waste those dice, but start to spend those dice in order to get more dice. But at the same time, you got to roll the right numbers. And a big part of this game is exactly that. Doing your best to plan, but then being able to change those plans when you don't get the dice that you want.
Yeah, you definitely have to be reactive, and there'll be certain times when a dice roll means I have to take advantage of this. If you roll a double, you're going to want to put that on potentially the wall, because having a wall barrier can really prevent some danger from coming in, and it requires such a specific roll. Or alternatively, if you also only just have one specific number that you need for that XP track, you're probably going to use that even though you maybe would have benefited from using it to attack the Weretiger.
And it is interesting too with the attacking the Weretiger, because that is another way to put dice on your XP track. So when you take off a dice, you can add that to your XP track. But also with that is if multiple people can get rid of the same Weretiger, everyone who was involved in that all get to take back a dice and they all get to put it on their XP track. So that can be really helpful to help 2 or even 3 players all build that up at once while also using those dice in a useful way. So there's a lot of stuff to keep in mind.
Yeah, and it can be a bit dangerous though to leave a Weretiger. Because if you're leaving a Weretiger in the village, you're going to go through that villager deck pretty quickly because they're just going to be attacking every time they're still around. So you'll definitely want to try and get rid of them as soon as possible. But it also depends on like what kind of Weretiger it is, because there's one of them that if you kill them, any revealed tokens advance. So if you can work together and maybe try and kill any other revealed tokens first, that could be beneficial.
Yeah, you definitely have to time things, but like you were saying, with the Weretigers that are in the village are going to take out your villagers, and you only have like 25-ish villagers, and some of those take out, like the bosses take out like 6 of your villagers in one shot. So that's a huge amount, and it is important to note as well, this game is hard. This game is very hard. We have won 2 out of our 7 games, so that's like 30% of our games. That is kind of close to when I began Pandemic, and so it is, and I do see us getting a little bit better at this game, but just know this is definitely going to be a challenge. And also I should note that things might change as well, because this is an early prototype of the game, and the designers have already said to us that they're thinking about putting in an easier mode or changing or adding some of the bad guys as well.
Yeah, and I do think we are getting better as we're figuring out a little bit more of the strategy, and we are doing more of planning for the future instead of just being reactive to any immediate danger. And so in our past few games, like we've put out a lot more traps, and those traps can be incredibly useful. They do require a 6 dice to put out, but then once they're out, if any token goes over it, you get to roll a dice. If it's a 5 or 6, that token gets caught by the trap, and both the token and the trap get removed. If it's not, the trap does get to stay there, and it works really well if you can trap a boss on there.
Yeah, because bosses take 18 defense, or 18 damage. So if you can get rid of a boss with 1 trap, that is saving so many dice. But the other way you can lose is with those upside down tokens, and those are sneaky, because you've got to flip those up before they get to the end, because if they get into your town, they take away one of your villager spots. As soon as 3 of those are there, you're going to lose. So you really have those 2 different ways you're going to lose, but that is like the sneakiest way to lose, because those can move fast, because a big part in this game is that it ramps up. The first half of the game, you're only putting out 1 token, you're moving 1 space, you're doing really small things, but the second half, when you get to the B cards in that deck, all of a sudden, you're putting out 2 tokens, you're putting out boss tokens, you're moving all of the tokens with some of those cards, and then all of a sudden everything's rushing at you. So you really have to have built up those walls, you have to have built up those traps, you have to have your extra dice, you have to be geared up for that second half of the game. And then a big part of it as well is your actual actions on your cards, and those can really change over the game. So let's talk about that in replayability. So the biggest part of replayability in this game are the different villager cards. And there's a whole big stack of different villager cards. All of them have unique powers. And those powers can really change your focus in this game, because those first 4 cards you have all do really useful things. They really deal with kind of the 4 key things that you can do in the game, which is flipping those tokens, building walls, putting out traps, and getting more villagers. So the first villager that you gain just adds to your villagers. You can always have 5. But then when you gain another one, you got to switch out somebody. So that means sometimes you can upgrade one of those actions, make it a little better, but often it means you're going to lose one of those actions and get something else. So now you don't have access to one of those key 4 actions, but you've got access to something else.
And the other thing you want to consider when you select your villager card is the dice value it takes to activate it. Because ideally, you want all of your dice to be useful, so you don't want a situation where like half your cards take like a 3 to activate.
Yeah, and I've definitely done that, because you just think, oh, great card, and then you put it down and 2 turns later you're like, oh, wait a second, only like 2 to 4 helps me now. I'm in a little bit of a pickle. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure it does everything, but the game really does feel different with those different cards, because some of them have super strong powers. Like you had one that was the Sword Maiden that can just destroy something. Your dice does sit there for a little bit, so you can only use that every now and then, but that's really powerful when you can use it. We've also had games where somebody can just put out a ton of traps. Like I think it was, you had a whole bunch, but 3 of your 5 cards all dealt with traps, which means that becomes your focus. So you're doing stuff for the future. So now I've got to do stuff for right now, and that's how we've got to kind of balance our team. So that is neat, that sometimes you become really focused, whereas sometimes you just kind of build up those starter actions, so you just feel like you kind of just get a little bit better, but you don't get quite so focused.
Yeah, and each game has felt very different because usually we get like maybe 2 or 3 villagers across a game at most. And because there are so many different villagers to choose from and all of their powers are different, that means you're really unlikely to always get the same kind of villagers. And so you're just going to be driven to try different things depending on who's available and who you get.
The game does feel a little bit different with different player counts, even though the rules don't change at all, no matter how many people are playing the game. The only thing that changes is in setup. At 1 player, you add 3 extra bad guys. At 2 players, 2, and at 3 players, 1. But other than that, it's really just kind of incidental changes, but they do make quite a difference. So I think one of the biggest things is because you've got the exact same stack of cards that you're running through to get to that win condition, you have kind of less turns overall, which means you're going to come to opening up those dice a little bit later unless you play a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think one of the key differences is you're really probably at higher player counts going to try and maximize making sure there's like 2 players who are contributing to killing a monster, because that means both of you will get the opportunity to lock one of those dice. And so at 2 players, you might be more often just being like, well, I can kill it, I'll just kill it myself. And you might be a little bit more risky at more players.
Yeah, at more players, it definitely makes more sense to set up those walls so they can't quite get in and kind of leave them hanging out so that you can, even if you can get everyone involved, that's the ideal, because then it's almost like a free action that everybody gets to build up that XP track, because it is still so important to get to at least 3 dice. 4 dice is a lot harder at 4 players, but at least 3 dice. But the other thing that changes is, in terms of those villagers, is you're a little bit more free to focus a bit more and to take those cards that are kind of bigger swings, because even if 2 of us lose our ability to recruit or our ability to flip, we've got at least 2 more people. So you can kind of plan that out a bit more, and folks can feel more like they're playing more of a specific role.
Yeah, it can allow you to specialize, but I do just feel like it's harder just because you're getting fewer turns overall. You're going to probably be recruiting fewer villagers and unlocking fewer dice. But regardless of player count, I think it's about the same length of time to play, because you do have the same amount of cards you're going through and the same amount of villagers in the deck.
Yeah, and turns are really quick. So the box says this is 30 to 45 minutes, and I totally believe that. That has definitely been our experience. Is games are quick, and turns are, because turns at the beginning are just roll 2 dice, place 2 dice. There's not a lot of thinking within. There is, because there's a bunch of decision space within that, but it's a really quick thing. The other thing I've noticed too is there doesn't seem to be a lot of quarterbacking in this game, and I think part of that is it's a little bit hard to say, okay, I'll do this, you do that, you do that, you do that, because whilst you can plan, you are at the end of the day really beholden to whatever those dice are that you roll. So you can say, oh yeah, I'm going to flip all the people, then you just roll 4 to 6. You can't flip all those people.
Yeah, that is true. I think the fact that on your turn you have to roll your dice does eliminate that quarterbacking, and it means you do have to be more like tactical and reactive just to like what you ended up rolling.
So the first thing to talk about with components is the art, because there's got this really interesting art style on all of the cards. And I didn't know anything about Weretigers before we played this game, but apparently it's a fairly well-known myth in Southeast Asia. And the artist for this game is from Myanmar. And I feel like there is kind of this interesting feel to what all of the art is. And it ties to that myth. It feels like it ties to that region. And it looks a little bit different than other games, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that all of the villager art is unique. All of the villagers look different and they just all kind of have a bit of character to them. And I should say that this is a prototype, so some of the components are subject to change. So what also is included are you have your player boards, and those are double layered boards to keep your dice. And that is really important because you're like rolling a bunch of dice. You don't want them getting knocked about. And there's also the main map board, which I think does a pretty good job of showing clearly like the 3 different lanes.
And there aren't too many icons in this game, so everything is fairly clear. And all of the graphic design that is on the board and everywhere else all does reflect that same art style that you see on the cards and on the box. And I do want to point out that their previous game was a much larger production than that. So that was Eldara, and that's a huge game. And this is a much, much smaller footprint. An awful lot easier to fit on a shelf in a flat in the UK. So again, before we do the final thoughts, I do want to remind you that this is an overview video. But some of the core things with this game is it's a co-op game, it is a tower defense game, it is a hard game, and it is a game where every turn you are going to have decisions that are really, do I need to deal with this now? Do I need to deal with this later? How much can my team help me out? How much do I need them to help me out? How much of a threat is this? How much of a threat will this be next time? How much am I going to build stuff up? You got all that stuff kind of in your head every turn.
Yeah, and it really ramps up as well. So it starts off at a bit of a slower pace and you don't have as many powers, you're not as strong, and then quickly those Weretigers are really coming, and they're coming in fast, and you have to be able to deal with them. And there won't be a lot of quarterbacking because every person rolls their own dice on their turn, and they'll just have to make the decisions that they think are best.
Yeah, it really is that mix between being strategic and being tactical. And that strategy and tactics will change depending on those different villagers that you get and the different Weretigers when those come out, when those flip over. And with all of that stuff in mind, please also do remember that this is a Kickstarter. So a lot of stuff subject to change, stuff might get added, stuff might get swapped. So do, if you're interested in this, keep an eye on the Kickstarter page, on the BGG page, and see how all that stuff progresses. And that is it. And again, that link is in the description. So if you are interested in Weretigers, please go check it out.
And please note this was a paid preview, but thank you so much for watching. As usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.